Beavers are incredible animals. By felling trees to create dams and wetlands, they have the ability to seriously change their environment. And in this way, they can be described as keystone species. But what if I told you that there are plants right here in Britain that can similarly significantly cause alterations to the environments in which they live? Plants which have the ability to create environments which are as acidic as pickled onions and as soggy as a wet bath sponge. Plants which have the ability to form the single best terrestrial carbon store on the planet. And plants which you might even describe as botanical beavers. Now, it might not look like much, but this little brown moss is one of those plants. Papillo's bog moss is a species in the genus Sphagnum, and amongst its leaves lies a vast network of dead and empty cells called hyaline cells. And it's these hyaline cells which are specifically adapted to sucking up and keeping in water, which means that these plants can not only keep themselves but their surrounding environments wet, even in the most droughted summers. As well as those hyaline cells, sphagnum mosses like this Papillo's bog moss excrete a range of phenolic, uric and other acids. And what that means for these sphagnum mosses is that both living and dead sphagnum that are both incredibly wet and acid are resistant to decay and able to form an incredibly special brown organic soil known as peat. This stuff. And peat is incredibly rich in carbon. In fact, peatlands across the northern hemisphere, like this one here at Winmarleigh Moss, are our single best terrestrial carbon store. Together, they contain more carbon in these peat soils than all of Earth's forests combined, all thanks to a small group of mosses. Of course, as well as being fundamental in our fight against climate change, these sphagnum-dominated bogs are themselves an incredibly hostile environment to life. By creating this kind of habitat, sphagnum has created something that's incredibly wet, acid and nutrient poor. And to cope with these hostile living conditions, you as a species, if you want to survive here, need to be a specialist. And there are plants here which are incredibly special. Things like roundleaf sundew, which have resorted to eating insects to get nutrients from their bodily tissues. There are things like bog myrtle, which work together with a bacterium which fixes nitrogen from the air into usable nutrients. The equivalent of you or me summoning a Big Mac out of thin air. Because these bogs, which are created by such a small group of organisms, are incredibly special indeed.